Hi, Jackson. It's Papa. I'm going to read and tell you a story that I've read and told a lot of times. It's actually a story that they turned into a movie, but right now I'm going to tell you the story. It's a story that your mommy, really likes a lot. So, the story is The Princess Bride. And the way it starts is there's a young woman named Buttercup, and she was raised on a small farm in the country of Florin. Her favorite pastimes were riding her horse and tormenting the farm boy that worked there. His name was Wesley, but she never called him that. Nothing gave Buttercup as much pleasure as ordering Wesley around. Farm boy, that's what Buttercup called Wesley all the time. Polish my saddle. I want to see my face shining in it in the morning. As you wish, is all that Wesley replied. As you wish was all he ever answered her with. So Wesley would be chopping wood. Buttercup would put 2 buckets down on the ground and say, "Farm boy, fill these with water." As you wish, is what Wesley said. One day, Buttercup was amazed to discover that when Wesley was saying, "As you wish," what he meant was, "I love you." And even more amazing was the day she realized that she loved him back. Well, Wesley had no money, and he could not marry Buttercup. So he packed his few belongings and left the farm to seek his fortune across the sea. Before he left, they stood at the gate, and Buttercup gave Wesley a hug and said to him, "I fear I'll never see you again." Wesley said, "Of course you will." Buttercup replied, "What if something happens to you?" Wesley said very firmly, "Hear this now. I will always come for you." But Buttercup said, "How can you be so sure?" And Wesley said, "This is true love. You think this happens every day?" So she smiles, he smiles, and he turns and walks away. But Wesley didn't reach his destination or his fortune. His ship was attacked by the dread pirate Robert, who took Wesley as a captive. When Buttercup got the news of that, she was very sad, because being a captive by a pirate on a pirate ship means that you just work all day just for the pirate and maybe never get to come back home. So she was sad and went to her room and shut the door, and for days she neither slept nor ate. A lot of time went by. 5 years later, the main square of Florin was filled with never before to hear the announcement of the great Princess Humperdinck's bride-to-be. Now, Prince Humperdinck was the Prince of Florin, whose father was very, very old. And so Prince Humperdinck needed to have a wife when he became king. So he could choose anyone in his kingdom to be his bride, and he chose Buttercup. So Humperdinck raises his hands from up on the porch of the castle and says to the crowd, "My people, a month from now, our country will have its 500th anniversary, and on that day, I shall marry a lady who was once a commoner like yourselves, but perhaps you will not find her common now. Would you like to meet her?" And the crowd said, yes. And the crowd turned to look at a giant staircase leading down to them. And at the top of the stairs was Buttercup. She walked down the stairs, and the people were amazed. She was truly a beautiful princess. With no instruction at all, the crowd just all started to fall to their knees. Great waves of people kneeling, and Buttercup was terribly moved. She stands and she looks at them, and tears come in her eye. Buttercup's emptiness and tears was because although the law of the land gave Humperdinck the right to choose his bride, she did not love Humperdinck. Despite Humperdinck's reassurance that she would grow to love him, the only joy she found was in her daily rides. So one day she was out riding, and she was far from the castle. She was riding in a forest, and she heard a voice. "Lady!" the voice shouted. She pulled the reins of the horse up to make it stop, and 3 men were standing in the path in front of her. Beyond them, she could see the waters of Florin Channel. The 3 men are not your everyday farmer types. Standing in front is a tiny man with the most angelic face. He is a Sicilian, and his name is Vicini. Beside him is a Spaniard, erect and taut as a blade of steel, and his name was Inigo Montoya. Beside him is a giant. His name is Fezzik. Now, he's not a giant, he's just a really big man. Vicini says to Buttercup, "We are but poor, lost circus performers. Is there a village nearby?" Vicini was not being honest with Buttercup. Buttercup said, "There is nothing nearby, not for miles." And Vicini said, "Then there will be no one to hear you scream." He nods to the giant Fezzik, who merely reaches over and touches a nerve on Buttercup's neck, and she instantly falls asleep. There's a sailboat near Florin Channel where they all go. It's getting dark now. Inigo the Spaniard is tying sails on the boat and arranging things in the boat and getting the boat ready to sail. The giant Fezzik carries Buttercup onto the boat. Vicini rips some tiny pieces of fabric from an army jacket and tucks it along the saddle of the horse that Buttercup was riding. There is about the entire operation a sense of tremendous skill and precision. Inigo says to Vicini, "What is that you're ripping?" And Vicini, not stopping and not turning around, "It's fabric from the uniform of an army officer of Gilder." Fezzik says, "Who's Gilder?" Vicini says, "The country across the sea, the sworn enemy of Florin." With this, Vicini slaps the horse, and the horse runs off back to the castle. Vicini tells Fezzik and Inigo, "Once the horse reaches the castle, the fabric will make the prince suspect the Gilders have abducted his love, Buttercup. When he finds out that they have hurt Buttercup, he will be very angry and convince the country to start a war with Gilder." Fezzik says, "Wait a minute, Vicini. You never said anything about hurting anyone." Vicini jumps into the boat. Vicini says, I hired you to help me start a war. That's a prestigious line of work with a long and glorious tradition. Fezzik says, I just don't think it's right, hurting an innocent girl. Vicini said, Am I going mad, or did the word think escape your lips? You were not hired for your brains. You were hired to do just what I tell you to do. Inigo said, I agree with Fezzik. This just doesn't feel right. Vicini says, None of that is anything you need to worry about. What happens to her is my business, not yours. Please, just do what I ask you to do. Now they are all in the boat. And they sail off. We hear their voices on the boat. Inigo, Fezzik, are there rocks ahead? Fezzik said, If there are, we're all dead. Vicini, no more rhymes now. I mean it. Fezzik, anybody want a peanut? Fezzik likes to sometimes answer a question with a rhyming word. Sometimes it's pretty funny. Okay, now the sailboat sails across the dark waters. Indigo is at the helm. That means he's steering the boat. Fezzik stands near the body of the princess, who's still asleep. But they fluttered a little bit, like she might be waking up. Vicini sits motionless. The waves are higher, and there are only occasional flashes of moonlight coming between the clouds. Vicini, we'll reach the cliffs by dawn. Indigo nods, glances back. Vicini says, Why are you doing that? Indigo said, Making sure no one is following us? Vicini says, That would be inconceivable. Buttercup says, she obviously just woke up, Despite what you think, you will be caught, and when you are, Prince Humperdinck will see that you are all punished. Vicini turns toward her. Of all the necks on this boat, Highness, the one you should be worried about is your own. He says that to Buttercup. He's kind of talks mean sometimes. Inigo looks back behind the boat again. Vicini says to him, Stop doing that. We can all relax. It's almost over. Inigo, you're sure no one is following us? Vicini says, As I told you, it would be absolutely, totally, and in all other ways inconceivable. No one in Gilder knows that what we have done, and no one in Florin could have gotten here so fast out of curiosity. Why do you ask? Inigo, no reason. It's only I just happened to look behind us and something is there. Vicini, what? And suddenly the three whirl, stare back, and as they do, it's hard to see, and all they see is darkness. The moon is behind clouds, but the wind whistles and the wave pounds, and suddenly it's all gone ominous, which is scary. Inigo, Fezzik, and Vicini, squinting back, trying desperately to see, at this moment, they are all holding their breaths as they stare into the darkness behind them. And there is still nothing to be seen. It's still ominous, only now it's eerie too. Then, the moon slips through, and Indigo was right. Something is very much there. A sailboat. A black boat with a great billowing sail. It's a good distance behind them, but it's coming quickly, closing the gap between them. Inigo, Fezzik, and Vicini staring at the other boat, and Vicini says, "It's probably just some local fisherman out for a pleasure cruise at night through eel-infested waters." And now, as the sound comes from their boat, they turn and see Buttercup diving into the water and starting to swim away. Well, that's a good place to stop this thing. So what's happened so far? There's a princess and a prince. She doesn't love him, but they're supposed to get married. These three men, the giant Fezzik, Indigo, and Vicini, have taken the princess while she was out riding her horse and taken her in a boat, and they're sailing out across an ocean. What they don't realize is that she's brave enough to jump out of the boat and try to swim away. And the next time I read some more, we'll find out what happens to her in the water. So I hope you're having a good time with school and everything else. I'm glad I could send you this tape, this video, and we'll talk. I'll send you more. Okay? I hope you like the story so far, and it will get even more exciting. Okay? Say hi to Oliver and say hi to Mommy for me. Bye-bye. I love you, buddy.